We are still waiting at this hour for what is expected to be a lengthy reply at some point today from the Justice Department to the ex-president's request to have a special master sift through the documents that were seized from Mar-a-Lago and potentially delay the investigation. It is expected to be a doozy. Last night, a judge granted DOJ's request to submit a response twice as long as the original limit, a whopping 40 pages, so it can, quote, adequately address the legal and factual issues raised by Trump's team in its initial request. Meanwhile, NBC News has learned that the ex-president has finally found someone to agree to represent him. Florida's former Solicitor General, Chris Kise, who has close ties to Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis and a reputation as a political knife fighter at the Supreme Court level. Joining our coverage, Betsy Woodruff-Swan, national correspondent for Politico, also an MSNBC contributor. Neil Katyal is back, former acting Solicitor General, now a law professor at Georgetown University and an MSNBC legal analyst. And David Lothman is here, former chief of counterintelligence and export control section at the Department of Justice's National Security Division. He oversaw the investigation of Hillary Clinton's emails. David, I start with you. This is the part of the Justice Department thrust, I'm sure, unwillingly into the news. What is going on really here with the dueling briefs over the special master request when all the seized material has already been reviewed? What's this about?
Well, look, I mean, there's always been an erratic nature to the president's litigiousness. He's not always been represented by the most shrewd, strategic thinking attorneys. This is a spaghetti thrown against the wall attempt really to throw a monkey wrench into the government's ongoing criminal investigation and possibly into the U.S. intelligence community's review of the classified documents that were seized at Mar-a-Lago. There's a bizarre disconnect, as I'm sure Neil will attest to, between what the president predominantly asked for in his motion, which sounded all about executive privilege, and what filter teams or privilege teams do, which is to identify any potentially attorney-client privilege material. So I expect the Justice Department brief to hammer hard on the inapplicability of any executive privilege merit to this case. This is about government records, classified records, other presidential records. It has nothing to do with protecting the candor of, presidential communications with close advisors. These are federal records. And with regard to the attorney-client issue, they have done what they always do. They have carefully constructed a privilege review team to identify potentially, and that's the word they used in their brief, potentially attorney-client privilege material, and discuss it with attorneys on the privilege review team to decide whether it in fact should be treated as privileged or to throw it over the wall to the investigative team.
David, what strikes me is that there wouldn't be any privilege issues to discuss if he'd simply left the materials in the hands of their proper owners. I mean, if at the end of his presidency, he had heeded Pat Cipollone and Mr. Philbin's counsel and left the documents where they belonged, we wouldn't be having this conversation. He wouldn't have this as a delay tactic, and DOJ wouldn't have had to respond. How much of this is sort of legal crises that are manufactured, that are designed to do something other than protect privilege?
I think part of this, Nicole, is also part of the mosaic of Trump's attack on the legitimacy of our government institutions. He has repeatedly attacked the integrity and independence of the FBI and the Department of Justice, and part of this brief and this litigation strategy, I think, is aimed at further undermining public confidence in these institutions. We'll see whether the judge leans that way. She indicated an inclination both to grant the motion and then at the very end of the motion, at the very end of her order, indicated, well, I haven't decided it yet in his favor. So we'll see what she says. But it seems to me the government has the balance of merit in this matter, and it would be shocking in a case like this. This is so different from other cases where special masters are commonly appointed. This is not a case like the search of Michael Cohen's house or office, or Rudy Giuliani's devices. This was not a search conducted on a law office. It was a search conducted on a president in exile who was hoarding presidential records, including large stashes of highly classified information. I can't see any palpable executive privilege anywhere there. And it's hard to imagine there's really anything that's truly attorney-client privilege. But if it is, the department will deal with it like it always deals with it.
Neil Katyal, you have been invoked. Your thoughts on this back and forth today and some of the broader issues around a continued refusal to see any of the priorities of the government that he once led as superseding his own personal legal prerogatives. I mean, he's still, if you step back, totally unwilling to do anything to protect some of the most secret intelligence that our country has.
Yes, Nicole, that's 100% right. For Trump, it's always about me, me, me. It's not about the country. It's not about national security. It's just about him. And it's never about the law either. I mean, with Donald Trump's legal team, it's always hard to see where the political pandering ends and where actual legal arguments begin. And this special master dispute is a really good illustration of this because ultimately it's meaningless and a sideshow. And so for three reasons. First is special masters are appointed at the outset of a search, not after the government's already gone through all the documents. The Trump team waited almost 3 weeks to file their request. And it's practically useless at this point because the department, the FBI has already gone through these materials and you can't put that toothpaste back in the tube. Second, the investigation here is not about the contents of the individual memos that he stole. It's about the fact he stole them. And so even if you found some documents that might be protected by executive privilege, which is, I think, ludicrous, but even if so, that wouldn't be a defense to the fact that he took them. Executive privilege is not, I get executive privilege for all time and get to put them in my golf club. It just means that the documents properly belong to the executive branch, which, by the way, means even if the special master found in his favor, it wouldn't mean he'd get the documents back. It would mean that they would go to the archives. And lastly, it's impossible for me to think that there will be any executive privilege documents that will be found because the Supreme Court has said executive privilege lies in the hands very much of the current president, not the former ones. And here, the current president, Joe Biden, has said there is no executive privilege over these documents. So all in all, I think this is a big nothing burger and a sideshow. But, it's done, I think, for political reasons, not for legal ones.
Betsy, there's some real tactical pieces that I still can't get my brain around. Why, before they turned over 15 boxes, 14 of those had classified materials in them, why didn't Donald Trump go through them before he turned them over? I mean, why didn't Donald Trump ask for a SCIF to be built if he wanted to keep the stolen classified material that included human intelligence and signal intelligence? Well, I mean, what were they doing? And what is behind this sort of bizarre and incompetent legal maneuvering now?
I mean, it feels like a lot of steps in search of any sort of discernible strategy. The fact that these are open questions. Was there a SCIF that could have been built, that Trump asked to have built at Mar-a-Lago? Why didn't Trump go through these documents himself more carefully? Why didn't he just turn over all the documents when the Justice Department asked very politely a long time ago for him to turn them over? And what it all points to is a total lack both of sort of any level of foresight on the part of the former president himself, who's ultimately responsible for the decisions that he made in relation to these documents, and also a lack of guidance from people around him who understood that both the seriousness of what they were dealing with and the very doable asks with which they had been presented. It's not that hard to give boxes of papers to the FBI. They weren't asking for anything particularly complicated or particularly onerous. Just return this paperwork that that the federal government, the executive branch, was supposed to have in the first place. And the fact that that didn't happen, and the fact that it didn't happen in a way that, at least based on what's publicly known, appears to be so devoid of strategy, just points to, once again, why this is a former president, or this is an American public figure who's been in and out of all sorts of legal problems for the totality of his time in public. If you have good lawyers around you, the likelihood of things like this happening is just a lot lower.